Can't believe you're making me do this, but you know what? I'm playing the game. D, what do you got for me?
Okay, so you just changed your glasses. You probably have not heard of this movie, and if you haven't, that's totally okay, because a lot of people haven't.
I know, not to cut you off, but every time someone tells me about a movie, like I saw one yesterday, it's always a disappointment and a waste of my time. How do I know that you making a movie recommendation on a channel about the vibe mindset is going to change my life?
Well, two ways. One, you're not going to see this one coming because the premise will seem to be so outlandishly dumb that you're like, there's no way that's going to be any good. And so if you get anything out of it, I've already blown your expectation. Number two, the recommendation is coming from me. That's all I need to say.
All right, you do have some power in my playbook, so go for it. What do you got? Let me hear it.
Okay, so I'm a gigantic Sylvester Stallone fan. I think he's one of the most brilliant writers. You can say what you want to about his action films and all that stuff and how over the top it is and whether or not it's believable. I don't give a shit. Watch Copland and you'll know he's a fantastic writer. If you hadn't seen any of the Rocky movies, which if you haven't done that, I'm just going to send you waves of grace because you need to have seen at least one. Anyhow, in the late 80s, early 90s maybe, Stallone made this movie called Over the Top. I think he might have written it. I'm not exactly sure.
He can write, so let's just be clear here. He can't write. So I'm going to go with no, but keep going with the story.
He can't write?
Dude, how many times you got to get punched in the face until you legit cannot write? I mean, I don't know. Should I even be going there? Should I even go there? That's rude. That's rude. I'm going to edit that out. Actually, I'm not. I'll keep it. I'm going to own it. I probably shouldn't have that.
No, keep it. I like proving you wrong. Yeah, he can't write. Little backstory, Stallone was a starving actor. Want to talk about like vibe mindset stuff? Here's where the vibe mindset comes in. Stallone was a starving actor. Starving. So much that he sold his dog just so that they could pay rent. And he had written this screenplay called Paradise Alley that was picked up by a movie production company. And they loved the screenplay so much, they said, if you ever have anything else, let us know. Well, he wasn't getting acting jobs because he, at the time, wasn't a very good actor. And he had this look that, like, nobody wanted. But he was very persistent. Well, long story short, he went and saw Muhammad Ali fought Chuck Wepner. Nobody had ever heard of the guy. Was supposed to get knocked out in the first round. Wepner went the distance. Nobody went the distance against Ali. That whole fight gave Stallone the whole concept of Rocky. He sat in his house for 3 days, wrote the entire screenplay, and went and tried to sell it to other people. Nobody would take it except for the people that had bought Paradise Alley. And they said, this is a great screenplay. We'll give you $15,000 for it. When you have absolutely zero money and somebody offers you $15,000 for your screenplay, that seems like a win. The caveat, though, was Stallone wanted to play the role. And he said, yes, you can have the screenplay, but I'm the starring role. And like, nobody knows who you are. Nobody will ever make this movie. Long series of events happen. They offer him all kinds of money to walk away from being in the starring role and up to $300,000 just for the screenplay. You said he couldn't write. This is before he's an action movie star. These people that are on a small company budget offer him $300,000 and nobody. He eventually agrees to take the whole thing with him in the starring role, and they give him these ridiculous qualifications and rules that he has to play by, which he does, all of them, $35,000, and he gets to be in the starring role, and he gets some royalties from it. The movie goes on to win Best Picture. And this no-name guy, oh, by the way, he went and bought his dog back for $15,000 because the guy, and he had to give the guy a part in the movie. Anyhow, all of that to say, from there, that launches the career of this person that now everybody knows by his first name and his last name. And if he ever does anything, which he does all kinds of stuff. But all that started from the writing. The writing is what actually won him that part. It wasn't his acting, it wasn't his chops, it wasn't his pedigree. It ended up being a combination of his writing and his work ethic. But the mindset that he had, where he wasn't going to allow himself to walk away from something that he felt so core in his soul, he said that I would regret it for the rest of my life. Even if they offered me millions of dollars, I would have regretted it if I didn't walk away with me playing that role, because that role is me. That's a mindset of solidarity that is so very fucking uncommon. And I've seen a lot of Stallone interviews, and a lot of the things that he talks about are the things that actually keep people from reaching their potential, is they don't believe in themselves enough to do whatever it takes to make things happen. So going back to what I was going to tell you, when you changed your glasses, it reminded me of this Stallone movie that nobody's ever heard of called Over the Top. The whole premise is ridiculous. I will give you that. He's a truck driver, basically trying to win the heart and the mind and custody of his son after his wife passes away. But what Stallone does, his character does in the film, aside from driving trucks, is he's a professional arm wrestler. And he wears his hat regular when he's driving trucks, but when he wants to get in the zone and turn it on, he flips his hat around. And that's when he becomes something hawk, and he's able to beat these gigantic, tank looking humans at arm wrestling. He also helps his son believe in himself. There's the kid that challenges him to arm wrestling. His son's like, I can't beat this guy, and he gives him this great, wonderful motivational talk, as Stallone does in a lot of his films. And the son goes back in there, dries his tears, and beats the kid at arm wrestling.
So did he do the whole hat thing? Because, even with because, I work with the professional motorsports athletes, we talk a lot about like alter ego and going into that zone and going into warrior mode. And so it's interesting. So to me, what I like about that story is the fact that when you change the way your head is and you embody this different character, this different persona, this different version of yourself, it gives you the freedom to not have to be in alignment with these like beliefs and narratives and stories and identity that you have as who you are as like the husband, the family man, the caring man, like I've got one guy I'm working with right now is like, hey, I'm a nice guy. I don't want to hurt anyone when I'm, I don't want to come in too hard on him. I don't want to take anyone's race and ruin it for him. I'm like, dude, you are now the silent assassin. I said, we have a different version of yourself that once that helmet's on and the visor comes down, you're the silent assassin. And so it goes to show, but are you on the same page with me that most people try to make most people force trying to change who they are in this identity standpoint from like within themselves. But sometimes if you create this separate persona within you, for lack of a better way of explaining it, it kind of opens the doors for you to test drive more easily these different character roles, these different character traits, and realize ultimately that, wait a minute, this whole character that I was identifying with is actually truly like a part of me, and they're not as separate as I thought. It's just me.
Yeah, so I'm going to throw out another 80s and early 90s figure that has mostly been forgotten in a lot of the sports world, but I'm sure you'll remember because you and I are about the same age.
Hopefully you're not saying Dolph Lundgren.
No, I'm not. I said sports, buddy. Sports.
He punched people. That's not a sport.
Dolph Lundgren did a couple of international martial arts championships, but mostly he was an actor. He punched people on screen, sure. I'm not one that considers professional wrestling to be a sport. Because
and what do you consider a sport to be?
I consider a sport to be competition where the winner isn't predetermined before you step in the ring.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like wrestling. You mean like performance wrestling or WWE? Is that what they call it?
That's what I said. I don't consider professional wrestling to be a sport. I don't know why in the hell ESPN is covering it as though it's a sport, because they know who's going to win before they step into the ring. All you have to do is read any book that any wrestler has ever written, particularly The Rock Says, which is his autobiography / memoir. Those guys know what's going to happen. They have writers that tell them how it's going to happen. What they don't have ahead of time is all the moves mapped out. But they meet before the match happens and they're like, okay, I'm going to try to do this thing. You try to do this thing. Let's just see what happens. But we know how it's going to go. Anyhow, Bo Jackson, remember him?
I do. 100 push-ups a day, 100 subs a day. I think that was his claim to fame back in the day. That's all he did. I was under the impression that he was the guy who that's all he did to work out. But, that obviously wasn't true. But I remember some story around that.
Okay, so Bo Jackson is one of my all-time favorite athletes. I share a birthday with him, and we also grew up in the same town in Alabama when I was a little kid. Anyhow, only, and I want to say this is against him, but I grew up and still am an Alabama Crimson Tide fan. He went to Auburn. That's the only big difference. Anyhow, Bo Jackson was one of the first 2 pro sport athletes playing 2 professional sports at the same time. The other one was Deion Sanders. But when Bo Jackson played football, here's the thing. Bo Jackson didn't really practice football. He wasn't passionate about it. He was just fucking good at it. And so when he played high school football, he would look at his coach and be like, why do I have to run these practices? You and I both know that when game time comes, you're going to hand me the ball and I'm going to either run over whoever's in front of me or I'm going to outrun whoever's in front of me. I might do both. But here's the reason why I bring up Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson talked about his football playing days because he got tackled and broke his hip and became the first, the first athlete to play professional sports with a synthetic hip. Anyhow, when he played football and he got lined up behind center, he would openly talk about how he became a different person. And he would say things like, you could put my mom on the defensive line, that's not going to stop me from busting through it. Mm-hmm. Because once that ball's in my hands, nobody is stopping me. And that kind of mindset says that once, not only is he in his football gear and he's got his pads on and all that stuff, and not once he gets into the huddle, he becomes a different person. Once the quarterback gets behind center and he knows what his play is going to be, watch any highlight film of him. Especially, what was the guy's name that talked all this shit about how he was going to...
Deion Sanders?
No. He was a defensive player. He played for...
I'll never remember. Anyways, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. But there was... The build-up for that game was like a Wild West show. Because Brian Bosworth was the guy's name. And Bosworth was on steroids, and he was doing all this stuff, and there was all this hype about how he was going to be the guy that stopped Bo Jackson.
Aren't we supposed to allegedly? Aren't you supposed to say allegedly was on steroids?
No, he was on steroids. He got busted for it multiple times.
Okay.
There was a play that happened where the Raiders took the ball down. They're on the 2-yard line. It's like 3rd and goal. And Brian Bosworth is the one guy, that's the way the play ended up happening, the one guy that could stop Bo Jackson from crossing the goal line. And what does Bo Jackson do? He fucking runs him over. And then he looks at him and says, next time, take the bus. And he walks off. Now, we've seen these commercials, though, over the past 5 years or so, that's had Bo Jackson and Brian Bosworth in these commercials together where they're advertising for some car or something like that. And they've been able to amicably come back together and it just be this big laugh thing. But Bo was insulted by the things that Brian Bosworth was saying about how he wasn't really all that strong as a running back and he wasn't really going to run over him and Brian Bosworth could take him down anytime. Well, when the duel happened, Bo knows the fucking end zone. Bosworth knows the back of his ass. That's a mindset, though, because both of these guys are incredible athletes. Both of these guys are incredibly powerful. Both of these guys are incredibly talented. And one dude's on steroids. So you tell me.
Tell you what?
When it comes down to mindset and you become that person, when you're in that zone, you become this other entity. That even the guy that has all the accolades, has all the strength, has even the steroidal enhancements to be the person to stop you, Is anybody going to stop you from crossing the threshold of the end zone to win the ball game? If you're Bo Jackson, no, sir.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is it just goes to show that I personally, what I see people making a mistake in doing is they want the external validation first. So it's everything like waiting patiently for someone to say, hey, yes, you are attractive, or yes, you are worthy. It's always this external first. Then I'll become, confident. Then I'll become attractive, when it's like the external validation. And it's like, no. People are always waiting for the external to create the internal. But if you just focus on becoming the type of person, who receives whatever it is they want. Like, let's say you want love. I'm becoming a loving person. Okay, I project the love. That will bring love to me. Or even something as simple as, I used to have the narrative, because I don't know about you, but well, you're a really good writer, but I was never really the best writer. But I said to myself, okay, well, that story only exists when I reflect back on the past. So, all right, so if I want, I can remain stuck where I am and reflecting on the past and keep looking for all the evidence to support the fact that I'm not a good writer. I was in a class where, if you weren't the best writer, you would see this small little group and they'd try to help you through it and stuff. But what's funny? The way that I became a better writer was to write. And I said, like, what do people, and I even said to myself, I'm like, what do people that are good writers do? And I'm like, well, they write. That's one. They probably didn't start off as a great writer. They just got better. Okay, that's two. And they write about subjects that they actually care about and are passionate about, most likely. And so, all right, let's go with those three things. And then I started like blogging, like, we've got some blog posts here. And it's funny because even one of our best blog posts on the Vibe Mindset is one I wrote, I don't know, way back at the beginning. So of me writing more regularly. So I found that writers write, speakers speak. I'm not maybe the best speaker right now, but I sure am, sure as heck are better than I was in the past. You do 80 YouTube videos and you do, God knows, maybe 1,000, Instagram reels or whatever. Speak in front of groups, you eventually become a speaker. And it's like, if you want to become a speaker, then speak. You want to become a writer, then write. You want to become the best, then do the things the best people do. Think like the best people think, and it's so funny because success leaves clues. And so all the clues are around us, but it's like, what are you willing to get out of alignment with who you are? And I think I'm still fascinated by the fact that and I understand we're designed where we want to maintain alignment with who we are. Because think about it. Let's say you and I are in a tribe back in the day of Neanderthal days, and you invite me into your tribe, let's say. Now, all of a sudden, I'm in your tribe, and you invited me in because I was a hunter-gatherer, and it was very aggressive, and I had some very unique weapons, and I was the type of person that could add some value to the tribe. I was aggressive. I was this. Now, let's say there's three characteristics. I was aggressive. I was assertive. I was creative. Well, if that's what got me into the tribe, but now all of a sudden I start to maybe not become in alignment with that person. Well, now all of a sudden you're like, whoa. We wanted the aggressive guy, the creative guy, the assertive guy. And now all of a sudden we wake up today and he's passive. He's not all that creative, and he doesn't, he's not in alignment. He's not being in alignment with the person we believed him to be. Now, all of a sudden, you got to get me out of the tribe. Like, I don't fit. And it's like alignment serves a purpose. Being in alignment with who you believe you are and your identity, to me, has, like, I always like to go back to the Neanderthal days, but I just feel like there is a reason it exists. But so accept it and honor it and respect it, but realize that you have to at least shine a light on all this and say, this is why I'm doing the things I'm doing, is I'm trying to stay in alignment with that identity. It's almost like an elastic band. If I go too far away from who I believe I am, I come back. Go too far away, it comes back. So that's why it's so hard to change, is you got this elastic band always trying to keep you in alignment. And that's why, to me, when you go into these alter egos or these alter personas, and you identify them, you're creating a new identity. Now it just invites that ability to kind of dance in different circles and not feel that rubber band has still the same amount of leeway maybe, but now you're doing it from a different trait, So I don't know. Kind of just going on the concept that you're talking about kind of got me thinking about just identity and alignment. Like where are you at with the whole identity alignment kind of concept?
Well, I think you brought up a lot of really good points there. One of my old mentors used to say this one saying to me almost every day. He would say, "We get good at what we do." And he would throw that in when he was telling stories about patterns and things about people's lives that it would seem very obvious to an outsider looking at them. Well, yes, this is why this continues to be an issue for you. We get good at what we do. And so when you're looking at why things are the way they are, your characteristics, your identity, you've got to be looking at what are my patterns? What are the things that I'm doing? Because the things that I'm doing is actually creating who I am. And if I really want to change something about my life, I've got to change my thought patterns. I've got to change my feeling patterns. I've got to change the patterns of what I'm allowing to influence me by looking at it objectively and saying, what are the results of this influence doing to the way that I think, the way that I feel, the way that I am presenting myself, the things I'm believing about myself. And you also mentioned this thing, and this is something I talk about a whole lot. The seeking of validation from other people in order for you to feel worthy is a belief that you're not worthy unless somebody else tells you that you are. And when you get down to the heart of it, you and I have been talking about masterclass stuff. I put together a whole masterclass on what the hell of heartbreak is. And I underline the fact that you can go through the most ridiculous, gut-wrenching, painful breakup of your life. I did 5 years ago. What I realized, though, was the real cause of my pain wasn't the fact that my ex-wife left me. It was the fact that I had actually abandoned myself, and I'd been doing it every day for almost 40 years because I had believed that love was only real unless somebody else gave it to me. And that was the real heartbreak. That was the true cause of my pain. And so without getting into all the minutiae of the details, but like when your heart hurts and when you're going through emotional difficulties and issues, it's not just your emotions that suffer, it's your mind. Because what's actually happening to you is the beliefs that you have deep in here that you haven't bothered to look at or you weren't aware of. That's what's actually presenting itself to you in crystal clear terminology right in front of your eyes. Your beliefs, you and I talk about Neville all the time. Your beliefs are out picturing you with your experiences. When I suddenly had the light turned on for me to be able to see that, oh, I don't actually know what love is, and I don't actually know how to give love to myself, that's why I'm hurting. It's not yes, the fact that my ex-wife left hurt, but the underlying cause of that is something that's much deeper, and that's entirely within me. And so that's the rubber band effect that you're talking about. Because now, if I want to change this, I've got to pivot myself over to this other place and let that rubber band come back over here instead of me trying to stay exactly as I am, but something else outside of me shift. And until I shift from within and address the real blocks that are holding me back, unless I address the real issues, and the real issues are, yes, belief, and it's a lot of subconscious stuff. It's all the things you talk about, Jay. And recognize that these beliefs in my mind are actually interconnected to the beliefs in my heart. And they're interconnected to my emotional center and my emotional well-being. So mental health and emotional well-being are in harmony with each other. If you're not mentally strong from a mental health standpoint, your emotional health is going to be screwed up too. If your emotional health is screwed up and you're used to drama and you hate drama, or you at least hate feeling drama in all of your relationships, you're carrying that drama with you in your head, and it's out picturing itself in your experiences.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting on that too, and I want to hear what you think on this, because I'm fascinated by the fact that even for the group of people that are fortunate enough to recognize some of these habitual patterns of thoughts, feelings, actions, and beliefs, some of these people still, even after shining a light on all this and saying, wait a minute, I found a nugget, I found an opportunity. Wait, this is a pattern. Like I can change this. even still, the word that I'm fascinated with is, well, there's a couple. Matter of fact, I'll use all of them. Why not? The first word that came to my mind was familiarity, comfortability, certainty, but mostly familiarity. And it's so wild to me that familiarity is not a word that gets thrown out enough. Because to me, even if I know, like, let's say I listen to what you just said, D, and I'm like, yo, hey, we're on to something. Like, I can change. Like, I'm good. Why does that person still keep going back to those relationships that don't serve them? And to me, I just feel like if given the choice, now this isn't conscious, I think it's unconscious, but if given the choice between change and growth, you know, finding that special person, finding that true love, becoming the version of myself I want to be, so growth and change over here, or, but there's also at the same time, there's a very unfamiliar, uncertain, uncomfortable because I've never experienced this before. But then if I go back into my past and I'm like, oh, this is familiar. Like I'm used to, you know, being in this type of relationship. This feels familiar and comfortable. There's so many people are like, yeah, I don't want to be in this relationship, but it's why is it that familiarity and comfortability, even in the face of like, not being loved, maybe even being abused, I mean, that will still choose that familiarity and comfortability over the opposing opportunity here? What do you think it is that drives us to this location? Or is it just as simple as like the visual I'm giving here? Is this not even accurate? In other words, is this so far away that really familiarity is that much closer? If we use my head as like the main, you know, dividing line, maybe it's because familiarity and comfortability is right here, but what I'm talking about is so far away. I mean, what do you think?
I think it's a multifaceted thing. Regarding relationships, I think part of it is we as humans naturally avoid pain and seek pleasure. So and if you study any ego stuff, you learn that that's a big component of the way the ego works. Avoid pain, seek pleasure. When we go through difficulties and challenges, pain in a relationship, we want to immediately transfer out of the painful stuff and do whatever it is we have to do to not feel that. So, hence, rebound dating, substance abuse, alcoholism. Um, you name the distraction that gets your mind off of what you were in your heart away from what you were thinking and feeling over here. So now you can be in this other place, and so much of that is an unwillingness to just press pause and sit in the discomfort so it can teach you something. So one of the things I had to learn is that instead of trying to avoid pain, I need to learn how to lean into it because it has all kinds of powerful lessons for me. And if I really want to experience something different, which by the way, I wanted to experience true love. I've been dreaming about it my whole life. I thought I had it, but when I look back at the relationship, I can see my own dysfunction a whole lot clearer. I can see the dysfunction that existed within the relationship. It's no surprise to me now, looking in hindsight being 2020. It's no surprise that things went the way that they did. When I was in the middle of it, though, I didn't want to look at the discomfort. I didn't want to look at the toxicity. I swept that under the rug and hoped it would go away. So on the other side of it now, or going through the heartbreaking stuff, instead of me running away from the pain and trying to drown it out, because I know people that have done that and 3 years later they're still struggling. I don't want to have that be my story. So I'm going to sit here and as uncomfortable as it is, I'm going to learn the lessons that I need to learn about why this happened and what I can do about that to change. And mostly what I can do about that to heal. I can't heal if I run away from the pain. I can only heal if I sit with it and let it teach me something.
So you chose to almost, instead of choosing familiarity, you chose, hey, I know this is uncomfortable, but what's the meaning I'm placing on this discomfort? This discomfort and this uncomfortable feeling, I know that there's something on the other side of it. Is that what allowed you to kind of like sit in that uncomfortableness?
Sort of. I recognized that I'd spent most of my life running away from things that scared me. And I'd spent most of my life running away from things that I was afraid of. And my number one worst fear at the time was rejection and abandonment by the one person I'd given my heart and my life to. And now I'm face to face with it. And I had learned about 10 years prior to that, that the consequences of continually running away from things that scare me are those things are going to come after me. I'm not going to be able to run away and be safe. And like, for instance, I'm a pretty small frame dude. I was bullied and picked on most of my life growing up, and I built a fear of other people on that. And one day I didn't cross the street like a regular normal human being because I thought the guy that was going to be walking this way was going to jump me. Did I have any reason to believe that? I made a judgment call based on his appearance, but I didn't, I was afraid, so I didn't cross the freaking street, dude. How weak ass is that?
Was it more his appearance or your belief in your fear?
It was probably more my belief in my fear. I reconciled it in my head as some sort of judgment call. I was wrong in all of the capacities. But from that experience, that got me to say, finally, and confront myself, I'm tired of running away. So I joined an amateur boxing gym because I decided if I'm going to experience getting beat up, I at least want to know what it feels like on a real end. And I want to have some tools to be able to defend myself. Now, did I become a badass fighter? No. Did I outwork everybody in the gym? You bet your ass I did, because that's what's inside of me. Did I get in ridiculous shape? You bet your ass I did. And I learned principles that I ended up carrying over into business, but really where I learned how to lean into the pain, I learned that from Coach Rebus. And when I went through heartbreak, I learned and I utilized one of the key principles that he taught me about boxing. I applied it to my own personal relationship with myself, my personal relationship with God, and my understanding of love. And I learned how to be solid in who I am. And that's what got me through. So the familiarity was, I recognized I was familiar with heartbreak. I'd experienced a whole lot of it. I didn't want to experience more of it. So did I want to sit in or did I want to go through more patterns that were going to lead to more familiar experiences in heartbreak and disappointment and feeling like shit? Or was I willing to do the hard heart work and the hard mind work, or what I had told myself was hard, and learn the lessons so I could really change? And I recognized, and I had some beautiful mentors in my life that were like, dude, if you keep doing the same things, you're going to get the same results. We get good at what we do. If you want a different experience, you have to change how you think. You have to change how you feel, and you have to have different patterns. But the only person that gets to decide how that is actually you. And you and I've talked about this. I read a lot of books. They taught me a whole bunch of stuff, but unless I did the things that were in the books, it didn't matter. It was just entertainment. And a lot of people read a lot of big self-help books, and there's a lot of really awesome best-selling self-help books that when you actually read this stuff, there's not a whole lot of content in it. It's really entertaining, and it teaches you some new ways to kind of look at things. And after you read it, you're like, oh, that was a great read. I really enjoyed it. And you instantly move on to the next book instead of taking what was actually in that book and going back through it and mastering it.
Yeah, I actually changed. I don't think I've ever told you this. I changed the way I read. So what I usually do is I'll have a couple of books. And what I'll do is I will read a book until I get a nugget. Now, that could be a paragraph. That could be a page. It could be a chapter. If it takes more than a chapter for me to get a nugget, I'm probably done with a book, to be honest with you. But I will read until I get a nugget. And then what I do is I close it and I stop. And I just stop. It's amazing how many people just can't stop. I mean, even think about meditation. Like, what is it really? You're just stopping. Just stop. Just stop for a moment. Think about even me reacting. Even like, let's say you say something to upset me. All that we need to do is inject a little bit of space between what you said and my reaction and just stop. If I just stop for a moment, am I going to respond or react to what Dee just said to me? Am I going to respond or react to someone that just cut me off on the highway? If we could just stop. We're so busy being busy, but if we could just stop. So what I do is I just stop. I read and I stop. And I usually like to, you know me and my notebook. I think I've showed you before. I have my little notebooks and stuff, but I'll write it down. Yeah, you got yours. I've also, I don't know about you, I'm big on note cards too. Index cards. I've got index cards. I won't show you my floor. It's literally littered with different note cards, and I just go back to them when it's time. But either way, I will take a point, and I think the mistake that people make is they get this information and they use it for this perceived knowledge and this perceived transformation and this perception of change and growth, when really it was you were exposed to knowledge, which in my mind is almost like being exposed to like if I had cologne and I went, you're like, ooh, what is that? I like that. That smells really good. Okay, the particles go away, and eventually you're right back to whatever the baseline smell was. You know, so you're exposed to it. This is great. This is amazing. A little bit of entertainment. Wow, this is great. And then nothing changes. But for me, what I do is I write it down and I start to think of myself like, what habitual pattern do I have that maybe I can inject this in? And, you know, it's amazing how many times I've taken, I mean, think about how many books, I don't know about you, I've spent thousands, I know I've spent thousands on books, thousands on, you know, education, God, actually hundreds of thousands, to be honest with you. I think I'm probably at, I mean, if you cover the school that I went to and all that and all the time, and even just, you know, it's crazy, not to get off on a tangent on this, but when you think about when you're in school, the money that you're not making, the money you're paying out, then the interest you're paying on that loan. Like, I don't want to go off on this call on like the education system, but you're like, whoa, 8 years of college. Everyone's like, oh yeah, you'll have this degree. All right. So I gave up, you know, let's say 8 years where I could have made at least 50 grand. So that's 400 grand of just lost income. So 400 grand right out of an 8-year degree, plus another 3, 4, 500, you know, you're looking at like $1 million move. You know, and it's like, if I had just stopped for a moment, maybe I would have made a different decision. But anyways, back to the point. I read, imagine in my mind what it would look like. What could I change? What could I do to remind me to put this into motion? And I'll tell you, I mean, it's helped with me in books. I look at books differently because, you know, even with athletes I work with, I've got an athlete that just messaged me this morning. He said, I'm going to go on a bike ride and I'm going to go to the gym. Okay. Is that it? Is that it? Are you checking a box? I think most people, they check boxes. Oh, went to the gym? Check. You know, read a chapter in my book? Check, right? People are all about checking boxes. And I'm not going to say I'm not a box checker. I love using this pen. Trust me, this thing's made some check marks. This thing's made some check marks. But the truth of the matter is we need to have a little bit more intention behind what we do. Like if you're going to do a workout, why are you doing it? What's the goal? What's the focus? What's the intention? And what are you looking to really get out of this? You checking a box, or do you want to be intentional? And so anyways, rant over, but talk to me, D. What do we, I just realized I'll start off. My name is Dr. Jake Cavanaugh. I created the Vibe Mindset. I'm all about using the power of your mindset, perspective, and all kinds of different things to really help you transform your life, get yourself dialed and focused. I work with professional athletes, but now we're starting to open a program up to the general public, and I'm excited about it. D, who are you?
Oh, that's a great question. My name is D. Grant Smith. Yes, the D is there. So if you call me Grant, you're not talking to me. I say that with a little bit of levity. I'm the relationship growth farmer. I teach people how to treat their hearts, their minds, their bodies, and their spirits like a garden, and how to grow love from within to revolutionize your own personal life and all of your relationships. And when I say all, I do mean all. That's all inclusive. That is your relationship with your significant other, if you have one. If you don't, I teach you how to attract that into your life, because that's what I did. I teach you how to improve your relationships with your friends, family, employees, or coworkers, or people within your business and your network and all these other things, because guess what? All those are people. It's not necessarily that like it's a whole different thing. They're all people. And so when you are growing and sowing love from within yourself and you are treating yourself right, which by the way, you are the one person you can't live without. So the most important relationship in your life is actually with you. That's where I help with people. And so once you revolutionize your own relationship with yourself, all of your other relationships improve. That's what I do.
That's so true. And it's funny because I see a lot of guys that do well, there's not a ton, but at least not in my space. I'm mostly motorsports, but you'll see with like golf, baseball, football. And it's so funny that a lot of guys that do like the high performance mindset coaching like I do, they'll eventually towards like, as their career starts to hit like the pinnacle, you start getting into leadership. And I find it really fascinating because even with one of the clients I'm working with right now from he is a professional motorsports athlete, but it's funny, our conversations 50% of the time are about leadership because he's got a team and he is the team principal, and he's also the one who he runs a business. And it's like, how do you manage the people beneath you? It's like, well, anyone, in my mind, no offense to anyone could be a manager, but how many people could be a leader? Like that's, to me, such a powerful skill. And to your point, like if you think about leadership is basically a form, in my mind, you tell me if you disagree, but is a form of a relationship, and it's like, how do you make someone feel heard? How do you help someone be in alignment with your vision, right? I mean, think about it. If you have a team, imagine if you're on a team, you're giving up your whole entire weekend. You're not hanging out with your family. You're not hanging out with your kids. You're not hanging out with your friends. You're literally giving up sitting on a plane sometimes or driving sometimes 12, 14, God knows, 2 days across the country. And you're giving all this up. But it's like a lot of people that run these teams that I bump into don't have these people that are making all these sacrifices. They don't even share their vision. They don't even share their vision so that they can be on the same page and the same alignment with them. And to me, that's a poorly managed relationship. And then you start to see these new team members coming in, one comes in, another one comes out. And I'm sure like HR costs in business have got to be through the roof, and it's like, if you just made me feel like you cared, made me feel like I'm important, made me feel like you listened, made me feel like, not made me feel like, but shared your vision with me so I can become in alignment with you. Like just that alone to me would really be helpful. I mean, have you dove into leadership at all, or you kind of stay more towards the relationships?
Well, I mean, I ran a radio station for about 12 years. So and my on-air personalities were all college students. My professional team were all adults. So yeah, leadership was a big part of the professional world that I lived in for a long time. And I understand exactly what you're talking about, because we had people that were over us that never really had much interaction with us other than telling us the things that were wrong. And if your leadership, the people that are placed in leadership positions, their managers, their whatever, if their relationship with you is to be critical, and that's what they thought that their job was, they would openly say that, it's my job to be critical. And I'm like, no, your job is to set the culture. Your job is to lead. Your job is to inspire, and your job is to motivate and to help us improve. But if you think your job is to be critical, really you're trying to lock all of us off at the knees and then complaining as to why we can't get to the finish line. And as you were describing, this client that you're working with that has a whole team around him and stuff, I was immediately reminded of another film reference, if it's okay for me to say this, or TV.
Just no more Rocky movies. I think we've maxed out. No violence. Can you somehow tie this to The Notebook? Awkward pause. All right, go ahead. Awkward pause over.
Nicholas Sparks, my least favorite writer. Although I think The Notebook is probably the best book to film of his, just because it actually has a somewhat happy ending. All
right, come back, D. So talk to me. I cut you off.
You did that.
I did. I brought you back though.
Take responsibility. No, Band of Brothers, which is an HBO series about this small group of guys that are in World War II. But this group of guys all go through training camp together, and then they get sent. They're on a platoon together, whatever. They get sent out into the field, and there's one guy that has been kind of the group leader the entire time that they're out in all these battles and stuff. But I think you get to like the whole short series is like 9 episodes or something like that. But you get to like episode 6 or 7, and the brass powers that be in this I think it's the army or whatever. They send in this guy to lead this little platoon where all these guys have been fighting together. They've been on the same team for a year or so, maybe longer, and they send this guy that has graduated from the whatever the army college is. I can't think of the name of it. And he's got the degree, and he's taken the classes, and he has all of the little check boxes that you were talking about a minute ago, but he has 0 experience. And he also has 0 experience with these guys. So for him to come in, and now he's their boss, their manager, he's got the certifications, or he's got the whatever it's called. I don't know the military terminology. He's got the rank. Sorry, he's got the rank to be able to say, when I give you an order, you better do what I say. But he doesn't have their respect. And so when it comes down to, in my opinion, in my observation, what real leadership is the trust that you have established with other people, the respect that you have established. And when I say established, that's mutual. That's not just you respect me and I don't give a shit about you. That's a mutual respect. That's a mutual trust. That's a mutual appreciation. And a real leader makes everybody better. They might push their team harder than anybody's ever pushed before, but I've been doing some research on professional athletes too and finding some inspiration. One of my all-time favorite basketball players is Hakeem Olajuwon. Now, if you've never heard of Hakeem Olajuwon, you need to go watch some sports, because he's considered by the greats of the 80s and 90s to be one of the greatest centers of all time. Not Wilt Chamberlain, no. Not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, no. Hakeem Olajuwon. But Hakeem Olajuwon had like a Michael Jordan work ethic. And actually, Jordan said that Hakeem was the one person he feared, which is interesting. But what Dream would do, that was his nickname, what Dream would do is at practice, he was always pushing his guys harder and harder and harder. And not only was he pushing his teammates harder, he was pushing himself harder. And his work ethic inspired his team to work harder. But he also had a pretty good attitude, and he was a very encouraging guy, and he didn't like get in your face and cuss you out. And he wasn't like Dennis Rodman or anything like that. But like, there was that camaraderie, there was that mutual trust, there was that mutual respect, there was that I'm going to help you become better. And I trust that as I help you become better, that's going to make me better. And in that process, everybody is elevating to a higher level. I think that's what real leadership is. And it doesn't matter whether that's sports or business or, some project you're doing in the community or something you're doing with your church or whatever the case may be. If you're in a position of leadership, your responsibilities are actually so much more than telling other people what to do. Actually, telling other people what to do isn't your job at all. And if that's what you think it is, you're destined to fail.
So true. And it's funny because if you take, the ship off of leader or the hip, think about like what a leader is. Like, why does anyone follow anyone? Why does anyone listen to someone or align with someone? And I feel like, to me, it's when you become empowered, right? Like, I think about probably the people, let's see, Alex, I think about 3 people come to my mind right now that have my focus, energy, and attention big time. They are influencing me in a very positive way right now. What they're doing is they're lifting me up. They're helping me kind of fix, I wouldn't say fix, but maybe improve on some of the areas in my life that I feel from like a business and a sales marketing standpoint could use some enhancement. And the way that I look at them almost as if they're leaders, right? Because they're leading me down a better path. They're leading me in a direction that I want to go. They're leading me from my current self to my desired self. And so, these leaders are essentially just bringing you down a path that for some reason, maybe you can't see. It's almost like, if you ever went through a walk in the woods, I'm really good just because I grew up in the woods. I'm really good at finding paths that people can't see, that you're like, oh, you don't see, like, you can't see that. And it's funny. I went for a walk the other day. We got kind of lost with my stepdad here in the woods. And he's like, whoa, we're in a situation. I'm like, no, we're not. We're good. He's like, no, we're in a situation. I'm like, just trust me. And so I saw a way back, and he went from it's so funny. He went from leading the walk to me all of a sudden leading the walk, and then him having to have blind faith in my leadership, basically, now that I think about it. And I saw a path and I saw a way home. And literally, it was so funny because I said, trust me, I know. And it not to go back to this, but like, I just remember this. At the beginning of the walk, I had in my mind's eye, I had envisioned, and I said, I want to walk back, not on the road that we started on. I want to walk through that little bridge in the trees through that area of the side of the street. And it's so funny because I kid you not, that 2 hours later, probably about an hour 45, 2 hours later, we literally were walking through. I know it was blind faith. And I'm like, no, I'm trusting my intuition, I'm in a good place. I got good vibes. And sure enough, I literally walked out, not on the exact line of where I was, but maybe like 6 feet over, maybe 8 feet, 6 to 8 feet. And I'm like, whoa, I remember turning around, and then I hadn't even thought about it. I turned around and I'm like, oh my God, like that. And just so you know, in order for that to have happened, we were walking, and then all of a sudden he goes, so we were only going to be on this road. And so my stepdad goes, oh, did you know there's a little trail on the side that goes off this road? I said, no. What do you mean there's a trail? I've walked down here before. I've never seen a trail. And he goes, yeah, there's a little trail right there. I said, oh, you want to go down? He's like, yeah, let's walk down it. So how funny is it that the odds of me, like, even coming up with a concept or idea of coming through there, not voicing it, but just having that energy, and then having my stepdad walk us down this trail, that turning into me being curious, me wanting to go deeper, explore, go deep, explore, brought us deeper into the woods. And then that shift in leadership happened. And then boom, I end up manifesting within 6 to 8 feet of where I wanted to come out. I don't know, crazy story. Cool stuff.
Look at the power of your imagination, man.
It's everything. Who was it? Was it Edison? I think it was Edison that imagined, well, I'm sure it's everyone, I'm not even going to pigeonhole it into one person, but think about it. Like, everything happens twice, right? First your imagination, then in reality, And it's funny because if that's true, which it is, it's funny because you say to people, well, what do you want to get out of life? And honestly, I don't know about you, but I've asked people what they want. I've even just kept things interesting and just said, hey, if there was anything you could do, like anything you could want today, like, what do you want out of today? Do you know how many people you want to get stuck? You want to see people get stuck? Ask them that question. Hey, what do you want to get out today? Wait, what? And then they come back. Like, are you talking to me? Well, is there anyone else? Yeah, I'm talking to you. Well, what do you mean? And then they start going to this, like, it's like instant panic for the people I've asked, where I'm like, holy geez, like, this is probably a bigger problem in society than anyone wants to admit, where it's like, well, what do you want?
And the other question, though, is interesting because you were just talking about, this is something that I stopped doing in a way. I'll write out the things that I've got scheduled for my day, and like the 1 or 2 things that I kind of want to do, but I don't look at it as like a to-do list. But if you're asking people questions, what do you want to get out of today? And they don't know, that pauses them, that freezes them up. My next question is, what is your to-do list for today? And if they have a to-do list, but they don't want to get anything out of today, well, that's an interesting paradox.
Expand on that.
We often will make, and I've got mine right here. We often will make our little list of what it is that we want to do, our to-do list, our task list, our goal list, or whatever. we write this down because of some sort of auto-programmed idea that unless I do these things, I haven't been successful for today. But there's no real intention behind the actual individual things that we're doing being something that actually will lead us on the next step of our journey, or will give us something that actually benefits us. We're on this auto program that you talk about, where we're doing this thing because that was what we were told to do from some other part of our past. And we've always been doing things this way. And I've got to organize and structure my day so that I've got everything that I'm supposed to do right here and I can check off all the boxes. But really, what you're doing is you feel successful if you check off the boxes. If you don't feel successful, but the boxes really serve no purpose if they're not actually doing anything for you. And if you get to the question of what do you want for today, and one of the things that you did earlier today before you started your walk that led to this random conversation with a random stranger who asked you this very pertinent question isn't, you know what, I've already gotten what I wanted from today. Because what I wanted to do was wake up early and work out and get my body into a better physical place. And I'm building a pattern around that, and I already feel successful.
I love it. And you know what's interesting? Think about it. So when people have a to-do list, that to-do list is probably, I'll bet you anything, almost everything on that to-do list has to do with doing the status quo, what you did last week, what you did last month. You know, I need to pay my mortgage. I need to bring out the garbage. You know, all right, so you brought out the garbage the same way, the same time, put it in the same bucket, brought it to the same probably exact spot at the end of your driveway. And then, you know, hey, I got to pay the bills. You probably sat in the same seat in your house, paid the same bill with the same credit card, signed it, the same signature, like everything's the same. And so people want change. It's like, you got this to-do list. Well, where's the room in that to-do list other than to do what you've done before and therefore live the same day you've lived before? You know, I mean, what about a to-do list is any different? Where's the desired self in a to-do list?
I think it's auto-program, man. And I think it's also kind of a way that the mind can try to keep you stuck in comfort because it's always been like this. Or you learn this thing from this person and they're successful. They're telling you that you need to be, if you want to be successful, you got to do things in this way. But it's all surface level, excuse me, it's all surface level stuff. It doesn't get actually into your beliefs. Because like you said several minutes ago, unless I decide what the version of me looks like that I want to actually be, I keep staying who I am internally, but I change some of the things that I do, hoping that that will change the results that I get. No, you and I both talk about Neville. We both teach a lot of Neville stuff. And some of the other, you know, Ernest Holmes talked about a lot of the same things. Florence Scovel Shinn talked about a lot of the same things. More recently, Joe Dispenza talks about this too. You have to, in his book is called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. You talk about that all the time. You have to get out of this idea of who you are and step into becoming the person that you want to be so that you can live the life that you want to live. And it has to happen on a mental element. It has to do with the way that you feel, because the feeling is the secret. That was Neville's big thing. And the way that you feel about yourself and that you feel that you already are the successful person that you want to be, that you already have, and you're already in the healthy, wonderful, loving relationship that you want to have, even if you don't have a person in your life at all. Emotionally, from a feeling standpoint, and from an imaginative standpoint, it's already done. So you're not seeking after it. You're not chasing after it. You're not trying to make it happen and be in control of it. You let the divine source that makes everything happen bring that to you and unfold before you at just the right time. But that has everything to do with getting out of this paradigm of I'm going to check off all these boxes and that's going to be the thing that changes my life.
I love it. And you know, it's funny. You reminded me of something that you said the other day that I have replayed so many times. And for you, it might be simple, but for me, I'm not quite sure, but it really, well, no, I think now I think about it, I do know why. But I think, and tell me if I'm saying this wrong, because I thought this was so powerful. You said that something like, if if you're chasing something, then it's running away from you. And I was like, oh, whoa, hold up. Like what? Like, think about that for a moment. It's like, wow, chasing, like the word chasing, I realized so many times that I'm just chasing this, chasing that. You think about relationships, right? Like, what does everyone say when they're in a relationship? Well, or even a job, right? It's a lot easier to find a relationship when you're in one. You're not chasing. Well, it's a heck of a lot easier to find a job when you've got one. You're not chasing. And, it's interesting because I do feel that a lot of us have this lack, this separation. We're always chasing. And I don't know about you, but if I've got someone chasing me, I'm not interested because that person I know energetically is in lack and separation. And I just don't want to be around that energy, right? And they could be a great person. They could be amazing. They could be caring. They could be my next mate. But there's something about being chased for me personally, where my perspective is, if you're chasing me, and there's exceptions, like I have a call today in about 45 minutes with someone who you could say, but I wouldn't say chase. They pursued but didn't pursue too hard. They asked me a question, said, let's talk. That's not like chasing. It's like, hey, let's engage. Hey, we're in a similar space. I'd like to hear how you think, how your program works, because I want to build my program. She's younger. She wants to build up her program. All right, fine. Let's talk about it. But it wasn't like she was chasing me. It was like, we're the same. But tell me what, I want to hear your thoughts. So one, did I get the phrase right? And then two, what do you think about that whole energy of chase, not chase, and all that? How does that all work?
Well, I got a lot of experience in this. It's been a long time chasing after people and things and not getting any of it. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's the game we played when we were kids. The person who's chasing, if you're playing the game chase, one person has to run away. Otherwise, the game doesn't. Otherwise, it's like standing still tag. So the same thing is true in life. Like, because here's what you're doing. Whatever you're chasing after is what you feel like you're not worthy of, which is why you're chasing after it. If you felt like you were worthy of it, you would just stand still and let it come to you. Or you would recognize that if you're worthy of it, you're both going to be magnetized towards each other. There's not all this work that you have to do, and also you don't have to prove anything. I spent 3 years chasing a girl in college, and I was trying to prove myself worthy of her at every single turn, because I had justified in my mind that if she could see that I was really worthy, then she would choose me. Well, that's not the way that attraction actually works.
I chased 74 women in college, by the way, but keep going.
I didn't have that kind of time.
You should have taken 12 credits like I did. You would have had the time. Go ahead.
74, that's
Of course, it did take me 6 years to graduate from a 4-year program, but go ahead.
Oh, the cost of being a doctor. No, so
only about $175,000 for each letter, and that includes the period that was included, the D, the R, and the period.
No, all of this has to do with worthiness, and it's just as true in business as it is. And I spent years chasing after clients and trying to prove that my talents, abilities, program, knowledge, expertise, all that stuff was worthy of other people investing their time, their money, all that other stuff. But what it really all came down to was, if you feel like you have to prove something, then you don't really believe in yourself. Because if you did, you wouldn't. If I truly believed that I was worty of having the relationship of my dreams, then yes, there would be some pursuit, and there's a difference between pursuing and chasing. And I'm speaking as a male. As a male, our natural job in relationships with females is to pursue. That's part of the way that the dynamic works. However, if in the pursuit she's not pursuing you too, then there's some disharmony in the nature of what your energetic flow is. And I think that there's a whole lot of that that's actually at play here when we talk about attraction and when we talk about chasing. If there's not a pull that's happening, where that person that you are pursuing is, if they're person or money or job or whatever, if that's continuing to run away from you and you feel like you're getting no closer and you're running as fast as you can and doing everything you can to try to get to it, then you're operating out of lack. You're operating out of desperation. And from an energy standpoint, lack and desperation is only going to give you more lack and desperation. That's the way the universe works. Really, whole law of attraction broken down is whatever your attitudes and your beliefs and your energy is, that's what comes into your life. If you have a strong, hardcore belief in lack, limitation, poverty, and scarcity, then you're going to be given more opportunities to feel that over and over and over again. And it doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter what your work ethic is. It doesn't matter whether you check off all the boxes on your to-do list. If your consciousness is operating from this place where there's never enough and you don't have what it takes and you're never going to have what it is that you want, you're just going to be given that over and over again. So that's why, as you've said numerous times, and I say too, when you get down to change, to stepping into this idealized version of yourself, you got to go in here and you got to address the real things that are holding you back. And it has everything to do with what you believe to be true about you. It has everything to do with what you believe to be true about your worthiness and what it is that you believe to be true about the world. If you believe that other people are going to reject you unless you do all kinds of ridiculous things for them, and then they might just, by the grace of God, give you a chance, you're going to experience more and more and more and more and more of that. You've got to change you've got to change you and what you believe and what you think and what you imagine and what you feel. That has to be the number one priority. Until that shifts, all this stuff is going to continue to show you things that you hate.
Yeah, and just to wrap things up, I want to add one thing that I think is interesting is when you think about belief is a choice, and it's believing in something. Like, think about how many people, there's billions of people that have a religious belief. Let's say there's I think someone said one time there's 3,000 religions, right? So you are born, and let's say you partake in a religion, so you believe in it, right? But there's no evidence, no support, really. There's very little evidence to support the belief, really. It's blind faith. And it's interesting that we can have blind faith in this story, because there's other people that believe the same thing. But I don't know, in our lives, I'm just like, wow, you can believe whatever you want to believe about yourself, and it's real, it's tangible. Like, if I believe that right now that I can go on, I don't know, for lack of a better, I can go on a 5-mile walk, which is, it's pretty cold out where I am right now, then I can actually take an action to support and create the evidence to support that belief in almost in real time. If I believe that our message is strong enough on this call together that when we're done, I can upload this to my YouTube channel, which is what we're going to do, right? If I believe that people are going to like this, then comment below if you like it, right? It's, I guess where I'm going with this is beliefs are interesting because they're all in belief in the unseen, right? It's a belief starts with nothing. Like, to me, there's no evidence, no support sometimes for it, but you could just believe. Like, if I choose right now to believe in myself, it's a blind choice. And it's like, if I have an option of believing in myself or not believing in myself, we are programmed by default to believe more than negative. There's a little bit more of a draw this way. But guess what? If you recognize that, shine a light on it, it's like, no, I know that the tendency is to go to this way. I know the tendency is to say that, believe that. No, I want to believe this. Just be firm in your choice, be firm in your belief. But you're right. It's interesting how I think people get it wrong that change starts deep with like identity and beliefs, and anything on top of that oftentimes just isn't quite enough. I think you got to get those. I always say your identity and your beliefs, if you work on those things first and get those dialed, then you stack on these other things, almost like a pyramid. You stack on the self-talk, the narratives, the thoughts, feelings, actions. Boom, mantras, affirmations, if you want to add that in too. But if you don't get the identity part right and the belief part right, it's game over. So let's wrap things up. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you? We'll put something in the description below, of course, but just where can people reach out to you?
Man, I just recommend people go just the direct route. Here's my email address, dgrant@dgrantsmith.com. And send me a message, man. I am a writer. I am also a communicator. I love having conversations with people. So if you want to have a conversation, reach out. If I can be of service to you, I will do everything I can to help you in whatever ways I can. But what I'm really not necessarily as much trying to promote is follow me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, follow me on this. That doesn't matter. What we really want when we click the little follow button, or at least what I really want, is I want to have an interaction and a connection with this other human person. I'm not interested in growing a following. I'm interested in making a difference. So if you want to experience a difference being made in your life, you've got my email address. Let's have a conversation.
That's so true. I love it. And you know, it's funny. I've had a couple. I had one. I don't know if I even told you. Did I tell you that I had an account, an Instagram account with like 67,000 followers. It was all about body positivity. We were getting like 1,000 followers a day at one point, and then Instagram shut it down because there was some like partial nudity, I guess, I think it was, and then it blackballed us, and then like it was just game over. Like we weren't searchable. You couldn't find us. And then I also created another social media account for something else, my coaching for motorsports, professional motorsports athletes, got to 10,000 followers, which took way more work than the body positivity at 67,000. That got shut down because apparently I reposted a copyrighted video. All to say that when it's all said and done, I realized I'm like, you know, all social media is, honestly, I think is a credibility score. And I'm like, you know what? For the amount of time, energy in my life that I put into social media, not saying I'm never going to post on it again, but I'm like, you know what? Talk about the worst return on your investment. All too often, we spend way too much time trying to build our social media. And reality is if you go the other way and you do what you just did, which is like, hey, let's have a conversation. I mean, that's how you and I actually got started. We won't go into that story because we're about to wrap this up, but you know, that's how you and I started. It's like, I was looking for a connection with someone. I'm like working from home. I got dead fish on the wall. I got note cards all over the floor. I got pictures of my dead dad staring at me saying, you better get this right. Don't screw this up. He wasn't that bad. I'm just kidding. But you know, so here I am. And I'm like, God, like each and every day, I'm like, I'm alone, you know, quote unquote alone, or feel alone, which is a very real feeling for me. Because if you imagine it and you think it, then it's real. And that's how you and I connected. But either way, the point is that I think more of us need to call someone, email someone, say, hey, do you want to jump on a Zoom call? Like that's what someone did with me. Like in 27 minutes, I'm just jumping on a Zoom call with someone. I have no agenda. I'm not selling them anything. I don't know anything about, like, I research them for 5 minutes. I'm like, yeah, this person's trying to help people change their lives like I am. So why would I not want to support and align with that person and talk to them? And maybe I get a new friend out of it. Maybe I don't, but that's to me a good use of time. So if you want to reach out to myself, thevibemindset.com. I'm Dr. Jay Cavanaugh. I'm a high performance mindset coach for athletes, entrepreneurs, anyone that's got a mind. And then D. Grant Smith, thank you so much for your time. I love that we connected. This is video number 1. If you've gone this far, which if you have, share your comments and thoughts below. Are there any subjects you'd like covered? We just kind of decided to record and we had no agenda. So we'll see how this works. And that's it, unless you got anything else, D.
No, man, I appreciate everybody for watching any capacity of this. If you happen to be like me, unlike Jay, and you are a Sylvester Stallone Rocky movie fan and you want to have a conversation about that, reach out to me. I would love to entertain your thoughts and ideas. Yeah, that's it.
And if you like 80s music or 90s music that you'll watch or listen to, then reach out to me. But yeah, you know what? The 80s and 90s movies were pretty good. So good call on that. It seemed I went and saw a movie yesterday and I fell asleep through the whole thing. Had those reclining chairs and I was like, thank God for the reclining chairs, because the movie was absolutely horrible. I won't say what it was, but $12 to sleep in a chair for 2 hours wasn't that bad. You know, I did the math. I'm like, wait, you got to sleep in the most comfortable chair in a dark space. Like that's at least worth $6 an hour. you know, and so I did realize there was value in the experience, just not the movie. Anyways, all right, we're out of here. D, just so I don't have to edit this, I'm gonna end it right now, and I'll shoot you an email later today. Sound good?
Sounds good, man.
All right, take care, brother. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for everyone that watched, and adios. Have a great day.
See you.